Hello, and welcome to the AstroEnergy Astrology Show podcast with Astrologer Shelley Overton. Hello, and welcome to the July 8th edition of the AstroEnergy Astrology Show podcast. My name is Shelley Overton. I'm an astrologer in Orlando, Florida. And I'm really happy to be here with you today. I am crossing my fingers that we're going to be going all the way through with no issues. I did record last week's podcast twice, and I'm still in the process of trying to get the sound quality to work with the video. So my goal is to post that right after I'm done recording this one so that we have it in order and you'll be able to hear a lot of the information I gave from last week. Last week, we talked about Mars in Aries and we talked about Saturn in Capricorn, now retrograded back into Capricorn last week. And I think there might have been a little bit of eclipse talk too. So all of that will be on the video. I offloaded a bunch of photos from my computer, so it gave a little more wiggle room to save. And I'm gonna, like I said, cross my fingers that that's gonna work out properly. So let me see if there's anything else I need to tell you about. Yeah, Mercury is still retrograde. And so I heard that Blog Talk, I think, was having some issues, and a couple other websites that I interact with, both were having issues. And so Mercury is definitely having an effect, but Venus is direct now, so we're really excited about that. And I keep confusing Mercury in Cancer with Venus in Gemini because Mercury rules Gemini, but he is in Cancer, which is a very feminine energy. And Venus is in Gemini, which is Mercury's realm, and Venus is very feminine. So those two, even though they're not in mutual reception, which means they're in each other's signs, there is definitely some energy going on between the two of them and how women interact and emote. I'm just going to kind of go over today's chart, and I'm going to look over my planner and give you an update on what's coming for the week. And if anything else comes up, we'll talk about that too. So today we have the sun in 16 degrees of Cancer. Sorry, that's my phone. Let's just turn that off for the time being. Oops. So the sun is at 16 Cancer. That means he is opposite. And let me just explain this. So I go by a flat rule of 8 degrees on either side of an exact aspect. So that's kind of a gradient of the aspect. And then after 8 degrees, I don't count it. It isn't necessarily how I learned, but it is what I just use as a rule of thumb. It's much easier to just use that as my demarcation. And what I mean by that is if the sun is at 16 degrees of Cancer and Jupiter is at 23 degrees Capricorn, the difference between 23 and 16 is 7. That falls within 8 degrees of orb, 8 degrees of difference. And so I count that as an opposition. Pluto is also at 23 degrees of Capricorn. So Jupiter and Pluto are conjunct opposite the sun. What that means right now is the sun is our ego and our sense of self. In Capricorn, it is the energy of security, home, family, and nurturing. And so our desire maybe through our self-preservation, which is what ego does. It preserves the identity, it preserves the self, and really it preserves the body. It's opposite Jupiter, which is transformative, transitional, and Pluto, which is also transitional, but it's transitional in a way that is, sorry, I just want to clear up the screen. It was a little bit foggy. It's transitional and transformative in a way of looking at our dark side, looking at the shadow side, and bringing out all the spiders and the mice that are lurking behind the scenes. And so what the sun is doing is saying, you know, I need to be home. I need to be nurtured. I need to see traditional structure. And Pluto, also Jupiter, which tends to poo-poo. I couldn't think of another word. Eschew. That's the word. It came to me right as I was thinking the other. It tends to eschew the energy of closed off and contained and structure and things that will support us in feeling safe and stable. Jupiter wants to be on the go. He doesn't want to stick around long enough for any stability. He wants to be out and doing and learning. Excuse me. And Pluto is right there with Jupiter. So there is this expression of the hidden. Definitely both Jupiter ruling Sagittarius and Pluto have a connection to sex and things that are hidden, things that could be salacious or not wanting, people not wanting those things to come out. This week we had the Mary Trump, the niece of Donald Trump. Her book is coming out or has been leaked before its actual release. I think they said it was being released early because it did get the go-ahead to be released from the courts, being published. And so that's coming out right now, which is not surprising because of the aspects. And so Mercury is also in Cancer. Mercury is 10 degrees behind the sun. I find this interesting because, excuse me, I got an itch on my lip for some weird reason. Mercury just transited over the sun, and that was a moment called combust. And so he inflamed the energy of the sun. We as a country are a Cancer country, so there's information that is coming out that is inflaming our sense of self and security. So currently we have the Black Lives Matter protests going on, and initially there was definitely a support of that the ideology because of what happened to George Floyd. And then as it settled in and the transits, a lot of the planets retrograded, we have planets now back in Capricorn, which squares the energy of Aries Mars, but also brings to the forefront a lot of other ideology that we have been bogged down in, mired in, which is the Capricorn dogma. It's our fears and how we behave as a collective based on the fear of losing our sense of self or losing even our physical goods, like things that we have, material goods. About to lose my charger. So we have the materiality of our world, and that is being affected now with the strong Capricorn energy. Again, with Saturn last week going back into Capricorn, it is giving us a review of the structure of our dogma, of the belief system that we have. And so initially, Black Lives Matters came out, and because of the video with George Floyd, it was hard to say, yeah, that's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. And as it settled in and the planets retrograded, and now we have this energy of conservatives starting to question it and saying, well, you are doing the looting and you're doing all this other stuff that is trampling on my right to believe what I want to believe, so to speak. I read today that there's a letter going around in the writers community basically questioning that they can't express an alternate point of view because now they're having their rights taken away, and some conservative viewpoints, and J.K. Rowling is in that. I follow her on Twitter. She's an interesting person to me, in the rough same age as I am, and she's being challenged because of her views on transgender people and how she's reacted to things that have been posted on Twitter for transgenders. And so she was on board along with Gloria Steinem as a historically feminist figurehead, and a lot of other authors got together and basically had this kind of letter manifesto saying that, you know, you're squelching our right to have an alternate point of view, and you're not listening, and instead of being inflamed and taking away all our rights out of the gate, you need to listen to us. Now, of course, that sounds reasonable. I don't say that's not reasonable. That's reasonable. But it's like the counterbalance to the push and enthusiasm that came out when Black Lives Matters and the George Floyd incident, and oh gosh, I can't remember his first, Elijah McClain, I think is his name, and Breonna Taylor. All of these are very important, significant events in that particular movement. So we have the push against, and that is the cluster of Capricorn planets against the sun and Mercury. Now, Mercury is not joining the sun. He is retrograde behind the sun, which meant he went from in front of the sun being out on his own, saying what he wants to say and having no repercussions. Now he has retrograded back behind the sun. He has to support the energy, but he is still going back to try and understand some of where the sun energy was, some of what's been going on behind the scenes with family members. What are the ideas and the thoughts and the communication energy behind our families and what we say to each other. I have family members that disagree with my point of view, do not listen or read the things I read. And so there is a very strong disagreement that is going to come up right now. Mercury, until he goes direct, which is Sunday, and let me get my glasses on, I'll tell you when that is. I'm a little congested again today. I apologize if I'm nasally. I feel a little nasally in my head, my ears plugged. Mercury goes direct overnight between the 11th and 12th, which is Saturday to Sunday. And so this week, as we get, well, today is Wednesday, so we're going to start to really feel like we're able to speak our minds or have some power and authority behind what we're saying. We're going to be continuing moving forward after that with Mercury, and that means that he will once again move towards the sun. He will be closer and closer. I don't think he's going to join up with the sun for a while. There won't be another crisscross of their energies until we get to the next Mercury retrograde. I'm not going to look it up. It's going to take too long to look that up. But having Mercury now following the sun, it means there's more responsibility and ownership. He is in alignment with the energy of the ego. He's in alignment with where we're going as a collective course. So the sun shines down. It is the sense of awareness of what is going on in the collective consciousness as well, even though it usually is associated with just the individual. The sun, half the day is shining on half the earth. So we get a group ideology from the idea that now the sun, which shines over half of the world, is in Cancer. The sign of Cancer is the crab. He wants to be protected. He wants to be close to home. That energy is coming out in society, especially with what's going on with coronavirus. And now we have a resurgence here in America and around the world, which again, you know, astrologically, we had planets move forward. We had Jupiter cross Pluto. We had Saturn move into Aquarius. And so Saturn and Aquarius was waking us up as a collective as well, that we are much more cognizant. It is the year of 2020. And while some people, you know, are trying to negate what astrologers do currently, most astrologers I know and follow, and myself included, knew 2020 was going to be a year of understanding, a year of awakening on different levels. Nobody said that year was going to be easy. Nobody said it was going to be like, yes, you just have your belief systems and then go straight into the next. I was thinking about this the other day, and when a front of weather, a very severe front of weather comes through here in Florida, and I think many places in the world, there is a very significant demarcation of the clouds as they roll. The two weather fronts come up next to each other and the clouds go across the sky. 2020 is the clouds right there between the two weather fronts. We have the old weather front and the new weather front. And that energy is churning, it's pushing out other air pressures. And we have a tremendous amount of wind when that moves over us. And it is the winds of change. That is 2020. We are the bumper year between the old and the new. I'm just checking real quick on my battery life. It says low battery, which is what, 10%, Juliet? I think it'll be okay. Well, we'll go as long as we can because I really want to get this up. But yeah, so we've got this really strong energy of winds of change coming over us. And because the planets go retrograde and go back forward, we have time to think over where we're at with the storyline. We have time to think over through the collective consciousness and individual experiences what we want to see for the future. Do we want to keep those same old ideas? Are they still keeping us in good stead, or do we need to get rid of them and embrace a new ideology? So that brings in society a lot of upheaval from where are we with my relationship with you as a group, and to the country we live in, to other countries as a collective, and even now in the future with Aquarius, especially our planet, to other potential life out in the world, in the universe. So it's large to small. And I did want to talk about how it affects us on an individual level. Having wherever our Cancer sign is in the chart, doesn't mean you even have planets there. If you have planets in Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, or Libra, you will absolutely be affected more strongly by what's coming up from now to the end of the year, because we do have Mars in Aries. That's the square sign to Capricorn, and currently it's the square sign to Cancer as well as Libra. There are no planets in Libra right now. I'll show you. There's nothing in almost half of the sky, and that doesn't mean there aren't asteroids or anything out there. And there definitely is, of course, other heavenly bodies, but we just, from our purposes here on this podcast, I talk about the close-in planets and a few of the asteroids because it's so much information and it takes a lot to really wrap your mind around. And when I teach, I'm trying to break down the complexity into more simple chunks of information. So I will talk more about the close-in planets and some of the other asteroids, but I don't get into the extended amount of asteroids unless I do the podcasts on them. And I did actually do a series on the asteroids and mythology on my Blog Talk podcast. So if you want to look that up, they're in the archives on Blog Talks, blogtalkradio.com. It's /AstroEnergy. So you can look that up there, and I may in the future potentially put those up. I'm not sure how long those are going to last. They are an archive on Blog Talk, but as I am no longer paying Blog Talk, then I don't know if they'll even keep them. We'll see. Currently, as far as I know, they do have them, but they have pared down some of my archived shows from 2010 when I started the podcast. So I don't think you can hear like some of the first year of my podcast. But anyway, that aside, when we have Cancer in our charts, wherever that is where we feel at home. If we have it in the first house, we can identify so strongly with home that we don't want to leave it very much. Or we may look to a partner, which is the opposite house of marriage and partnership, to give us the structure, and someone who is more likely to be out in the world earning money, because we want to stay here and we don't want to necessarily go out there in the big bad world. When you have Cancer in the second house, you're much more concerned. Well, all Cancers are very concerned about money. Let's just face it. Capricorn's the opposite sign, looks to Capricorn energy to give structure and financial security. So Cancer is a sign that we do need to have monetary structures in place to make us feel secure. In the second house, that's accented even more. Cancer in the second house may earn money from doing things out of the home. That would be a Gemini rising. And then Cancer in the third house, we're going to be much more quiet about how we express ourselves. We may when we get mad, and this is also true for most Cancers, if you get mad, you hole up and you go and nurture yourself away from what's out there, because it ends up, we go into the shell. We're the crab going into our shell. And so communication, the communications house is the third house. That makes us much more likely to not be forthright and out there with our communication style, but much more passive aggressive or nonverbal in our communication style. The fourth house is ruled by Cancer and ruled by the moon. And so the fourth house is where we express ourselves domestically, how we decorate or cook or do more of the quintessential domestic endeavors, and really do make a nice house, entertain, have things that are nurturing, food or environment of textures and clothing and things like that that just make you feel really comfortable and welcomed. In the fifth house, Cancer is about children, and even though Cancer is the sign of the mother, it doesn't always make Cancers the best mothers unless they really are attached in a different way to children. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But in the fifth house, Cancer can be more critical per se of children, but also much more involved in their children's lives, maybe even to a point of being oppressive. So in the sixth house, Cancers are the ultimate martyred helper. They already are nurturers by the energy of the moon and wanting to be that person, the go-to person for people who need help. But in the sixth house of service, now they are also somewhat martyred, but they do and do and do for others. And unless there are other planets that are making them much more restricted, like say, just as an example, my mother has Uranus, the sign of detachment, in Cancer. And so that can pull back that nurturing energy and make her feel overwhelmed when she has to show those emotions. That's what Uranus does. It is not an emotional planet. It wants to be in control intellectually. So in the seventh house, Cancer wants to hole up with a partner and nurture the relationship and be that person to go to for the marriage. And likely Cancer in that house, they're going to be doers. They may be very good with business and out in their careers, because that is a Cancer or a Capricorn rising. So their rising sign, they may be their own structure. They may not look for a partner to give them structure, as Capricorn is in the first house of self. But they do really enjoy having someone maybe at home who nurtures them, because they're out doing the work. In the eighth house of death and rebirth, the Scorpio house makes Cancerian energy extra sensitive. They're already pretty sensitive and may hide it really well because of the connection to the Capricorn energy. But in the eighth house, they are extremely aware, extremely intuitive, and you can't get anything past them. Let's just be honest. You're not going to be able to, they're just going to know in the relationship if you're being honest or not. And they expect a very strong, deep integrity in the relationship. That would put Sagittarius on the rising sign. In the ninth house, which is Sagittarius's house, if you put Cancer there, Cancers are more likely to move, or not Cancers, the people with Cancer in the ninth house are more likely to move. And excuse me, they feel that the world is their home, and they're connected to people of all cultures. So I'm just looking for my little water bottle here. Let's take a quick sip break. Well, I muted me, but it probably wasn't mute because the app is still recording my voice. So I apologize for all the coughing. And anyway, so yeah, having Cancer influenced by Sagittarius's influence, we are a little bit more detached from the home per se, and wanting to have freedom within the home. And that may not necessarily express by moving, but in my case, I actually do have Cancer in the ninth house, and I have moved a lot, and I do appreciate a sense of freedom and cooperation with people of other cultures in my home environment. So having Cancer in the house of career, it means that you could very likely make a career out of domestic energy, or you create a work or career environment out of the home. That puts Capricorn down in the home and family sector. So having Cancer up in the career sector and Capricorn down in the family sector, very strong energy around career being made from the family, from the home. I was just watching a video earlier today, Norp and South, if you're interested in looking it up, KNORP, on YouTube. But they have a family of 11, and they do YouTube videos. So they make their living off of what they do. And now they're currently renovating a house. So there's some very strong energy of that dynamic. And that would put, see, Libra on the horizon, on the rising sign for people who do that. The 11th house Cancer is going to be definitely someone who is not as attached to a home in the traditional sense. They look for an alternative type of housing. They may be in a commune. They may look to a cult or a religious group. They may just be a wanderer, someone who just transient, goes around and learns from environment and different cultures, sort of like a Sagittarius energy. or they may increase the energy of domestic, like here's an idea. It's Aquarius energy, so experimenting with recipes and different kind of chemistry of food would be something where we would see Cancer in the 11th house, or some type of scientific endeavor that relates to things around the house, like chemicals, chemistry for cleaning, things like that could be very much the 11th house Cancerian energy. And finally, the 12th house Cancer is going to be, again, holding up. You have the 12th house is already a Pisces ruled sign that wants to stay out of the spotlight, wants to hold up, because really the outside world is just way too overwhelming. When you put Cancer there, it's just going to be someone who is best at home. They are holding up. They may be agoraphobic, or, really extremely psychic or mediumistic. And so it really comes home to roost. They're going to be really sentimental, vintagey, definitely enjoying things from the past, maybe a hoarder, honestly. And that would be Aries rising with, or no, excuse me, Cancer or Leo risings. I can tell you I have Leo in my chart. My dad has Leo, my son has Leo. And my daughter too, Juliet, has Leo in the 12th. So, you can have that sentimental attachment to objects. So anyway, or maybe even bit of a clean freak. It could go either way, because it's Capricorn in the house of Virgo, which can be very OCD about cleanliness and cleaning. But anyway, that's kind of a walk around the zodiac with Cancer, which I didn't expect to do. But hey, hopefully it'll help you understand astrology a little bit more. So today we have Mars at 6 degrees Aries. And like I said, Mars is squaring Cancer. He is exactly square to Mercury in the sky right now. And that means that there's going to be a conflict between people who are trying to be reasonable. And I'm going to just use as an example, because it's everybody's go-to understanding, Fauci versus Donald Trump. So Dr. Fauci is the Mercury energy. He's medical, he's health. That's Mercury. It's also communications. He gets up, he talks about it. Mars is Trump taking action, wanting to do it, and not really concerned about the fallout. Aries energy can be very strong, new childlike energy. They're prone to tantrums at times if they don't get their way, or they just want to get going with things. It's like the Nike slogan, just do it. It's like, let's just do it. We're not going to worry about the fallout. The fire signs can be that way. More Sagittarius and Aries. I don't know if Leo is necessarily. Leo is more of a communicator and a leader for his energy, but Sagittarius and Aries are the energy of let's just do it, get it done. Yeah, we've got Neptune at 20 degrees of Pisces, now retrograde. For you Virgos, especially Virgos around the beginning to teens of September, are going to be feeling this energy. There's an opposition, and what's going to happen is Pisces is more like a Virgo energy. It's much more practical, pragmatic, and not as attached or connected. I know I felt some of this energy, and I didn't really think about it, but it's really true. I have Neptune in the first, and there are some issues that I deal with, having like this thread that goes from me to someone else. It's just like I can't get over it, get the attachment cut. And when Neptune went retrograde, it's a clarifying, cooling energy. It's not as watery. It's more practical and pragmatic, like the opposite energy of Pisces to Virgo. So Virgos are cool, collected, and meticulous and all that. So we're going to just finish up here on my phone. I apologize for getting cut off. My computer died, and it was my bad because I didn't plug it in. Anyway, so the practical side of Neptune is now opposing Virgo, and that may mean that Virgos are even more practical and pragmatic, but definitely the Neptune energy opposing your sun or opposing your Virgo planets is going to be a process of retrograde forward, about clearing out a lot of ego issues and having boundaries with family. Not family, boundaries with other people, anyone. So anyway, with that, I'm going to end this because I don't know how much life I have on my phone, And I want to thank you for showing up. Please do check me out at angeliczodiac.com. I'm going to be doing a lot more with it. I'm in the process of doing a renovation of some stuff on there. I'm putting up a shop. I'm doing a lot of different things and connections and links to Angelic Zodiac. Anyway, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next week. And please have patience during this Mercury retrograde and shadow period that we're still going to be in. Okay, shadow period can still bring a bit of difficulty until we clear that, and that'll be another couple weeks before we clear the shadow period of the Mercury and Mercury and Cancer. There we go. Okay, anyway, take care. That's all for this week. See you later. Bye.
You have been listening to the AstroEnergy Astrology Show. If you would like to get a private reading with Shelley, please contact her through angeliczodiac.com or at so@angeliczodiac.com. You can arrange a reading through the Angelic Zodiac page at facebook.com as well. Check out Angelic Zodiac on Instagram for up-to-date information on events, discounts, blogs and planetary transits at Angelic Zodiac 1 on Instagram. If you would like to see Shelley's art, shelleyoverton.com, or for astrology art, go to astroart.net. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Other music will be credited within the show. Advice given in the program is intended for entertainment purposes only. Join us here next week for more of the AstroEnergy Astrology Show podcast. You can find us on iTunes and Google Play, and where podcasts are accessed.